was going to be one of the hardest decisions that I've ever made in my life. The pain was excruciating. The pain was unendurable. My heart broke as I handed my baby to the air hostess who would be caring for him on the long plane ride to Guyana, where he would stay with my friend while I try to find a job and get on my feet. See, sometimes we have to make sacrifices, and sometimes we have to make tough decisions to get the results that we want. Sometimes we have to resist the instant gratification and focus on the long game. I knew that this decision I had to make was going to be a painful one. But I also knew that if I was going to move from the place I was and get a better life for us, I knew that this is what it was going to take. It was hard. It was so much harder than I ever imagined. It turns out that the only job that I could find was working as a nanny. I miss my son every single day. I wanted to feel my own son in my arms. And after the most agonizing 3 months, I took all the money that I had saved up and I bought a ticket and I went to visit him for 4 days. He was 9 months old at the time. He crawled into my suitcase and sat down and looked up at me waiting. His eyes were saying, "Mommy, please don't leave me." I tried to keep the tears back. I knelt on the floor to take him in my arms. And I showed him, I said, "Mommy loves you." And I opened my arms wide and said, "Mommy loves you this much." And he took his little arms and he opened his tiny baby arms like this. What I feel is to show me his love. And in that moment, my heart broke a second time because I knew that I had to leave him again soon. But I returned with so much energy and so much determination and so much fire and so much desire that I wish I could tell you that it only took a few months before I returned and I got him. But that's not how it happened at all. When I returned, I had some immigration problems. See, when I left as an undocumented immigrant. And when I came back, the doors were closing in on me. Took a while, but they told me, they said, you would not be able to travel again, at least until your status is fixed. And that could take many years. I felt hopeless. I didn't know when I was going to see my son again, and I had to live with the pain. So I numbed it. I'm not advocating that you do this, but it's all I knew at the time. I numbed my pain. And the years went by. I didn't know it then, actually, but and I'm happy I didn't know it then, but it would take another 20 years before I would be able to leave the country again. But there is a God. There is a God. Not only there is a God, I had turned my back on him at the time, but he saw fit to love me unconditionally. And instead of a 20-year sentence, he saw it fit to reunite my son with me after almost 4 of the longest years of my life. But hope is a beautiful thing. My son was reunited with me. He was almost 4 years old, and he sat in my lap and he looked up at me and he goes, "I love you, Mommy." And then he took his little arms like this and he put it all the way behind his back and he said, "This much, Mommy, look, this much." my life felt complete. I felt overjoyed. I had my son back after all these years, not knowing, hopeless, not knowing if I would ever, or when I would see him. So, the most important aspect of love is not in giving or is in receiving. The most important aspect of love is in its being. Because the measure of love is truly love without measure. I couldn't give my son everything that he needed in his life. I couldn't. But I knew that there was one thing, that if I gave him this one thing, that everything else would be provided for him. That everything else would fall into place, and it has over the years, it has. And just to get some audience participation right this second, because I think I need it. What do you think that one thing was?
Love.
Who else says love?
Love.
Love? Who else says love? 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 Love?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not fair. I should have said 2 words. Love is the first word. But yeah, I gave him what was given to me. I gave him unconditional love. And I'll tell you, at our core, it's the way we love which determines how deep our impact lies with others, of course. It's the foundation from which everything else flows. Acceptance, respect, trust. When we can love ourselves unconditionally, we can love who we are with compassion and with acceptance, then we can love those we serve with acceptance and compassion. When our clients feel loved, they will feel safe. They will feel valued. We will become their anchor, the person that they look up to. They will listen to us. They will share with us. But most important of all, they will model what we do. You know, one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou, yes, she said, people will forget what you tell them. They will forget what you do for them, but they will never, ever forget the way you make them feel. And in the end, the most powerful way, the most impactful way, the most inspiring way that we can teach others is by our own example. What kind of example are we looking to leave? What kind of example are we, the legacy that we want to leave? Not talking to each other, bickering. We're a small community. I didn't even know there was this much bickering going on in the community. But is that the legacy that we want to leave? People are looking at our example. They're looking to see how we behave. So when we discipline with love, we build trust. And when we set boundaries with kindness, it promotes safety. And when we redirect with patience, it will always promote growth. So I want to leave you with what stands out for me as the most important point that stands out for me. And that is the most important aspect of love is not in giving or in receiving. It is in its being. Because the measure of love then becomes love without measure. At our core, it's how we love that determines the depth of our impact on others. And from my experience and my perspective, there's only one way. And that one way is unconditionally. Unconditionally. Thank you for being my captive audience. I appreciate it. Would anybody like to share anything that stands out for you? Or if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer, because I ran through that like really fast.
Good.
Thank you for being vulnerable.
Yes.
For
Very good.
showing yourself.
Because I know you're